If you want to get faster, then even making just one of the mistakes that I'm going to talk about in this video could be seriously holding you back. And how do I know that? Well, it's because I made every single one of them, and when I stopped doing them, my performance got significantly better. The first thing that might be making you slow is cycling your legs during acceleration. This is incredibly common, especially for people who are new to sprinting, and it causes problems in multiple different ways. First, it leads to longer air time and less ground time during acceleration, which is the opposite of what you want to be able to overcome your inertia and reach max velocity as quickly as possible. You can only actually generate force while your feet are on the ground, so you want your steps to be as frequent as possible. Big leg cycles delay your following steps, causing you to generate force at a slower rate and therefore accelerate more slowly. The second reason that cycling your legs is so bad is that it leads to your feet striking in front of your center of mass. When your feet strike in front of your center of mass, it creates braking forces, and it also forces you to wait until your center of mass crosses over the foot to be able to push backward and continue accelerating. On top of that, it changes your shin angle to be more vertical and less horizontal. The angle of your shins determines what direction you produce force in. So when your shins are vertical, you produce vertical forces, but the primary driver of acceleration is horizontal forces. If on your second and third steps your foot strikes in front of your center of mass and your shin angle is vertical, you will immediately push yourself into an upright position, making it impossible to maintain proper acceleration angles and very difficult to accelerate to max speed. In contrast to that, when you are at maximum speed, you no longer need primarily horizontal forces. Instead, you need to apply vertical forces into the ground to maintain your speed and to maintain proper body positioning. Which leads me to the second mistake that a ton of sprinters make: pulling backward against the ground instead of vertically striking it. It makes sense intuitively to want to pull horizontally against the ground when you are trying to move as fast as possible. However, at max speed, your priority is no longer making your body move forward. It is now keeping yourself upright and trying to maintain your velocity through vertical forces. This is why when you watch elite sprinters, you see very upright postures and extremely powerful vertical pushes into the ground. There are a few really good drills that you can use to teach yourself this coordination. My favorite are switches and dribbles. You can do single, double, or triple switches as long as you make sure to keep your legs moving directly up and down with no cycling. For dribbles, you can do them at the ankle level, the shin level, or the knee level, and I find it very effective to transition straight from dribbling into max speed sprinting to maintain that robotic vertical force production. It helps to remember throughout all your training that horizontal forces are the primary drivers of acceleration and vertical forces are the primary drivers of maximum velocity, so that you know what to focus on throughout your drills and your repetitions. However, it isn't enough just to know what kind of forces you need to produce or what movement patterns are correct. To get really fast, all of these things have to become second nature, which is to say you have to practice a lot. That brings us to the third mistake that sprinters make, which is not sprinting enough. And when I say sprinting, I don't mean casual reps on the track or repeat hundreds or 200s. I mean being fresh, in spikes, and racing all out against either a teammate or a clock over a very short distance. This is what allows you to actually hit your max speed, and max speed is absolutely vital for your sprinting performance. In fact, if you aren't hitting your maximum speed at least once per week, chances are it's deteriorating, meaning you're actually getting slower. The reason this happens so fast is that a lot of speed training adaptations are purely neurological, meaning that instead of your body actually changing and making you faster, which does happen just more slowly and over a longer period of time, your brain and neural pathways are just getting stronger and more efficient at firing your muscles more quickly. That's why over a week, your physical adaptations to sprint training won't change, but your neurological ones could begin to break down. This makes it incredibly important to make sure you get out on the track at least one time per week minimum to keep your brain and body in peak explosive condition. And when you do head out to the track for a max speed day, it's really important that you don't make this next mistake, otherwise you could be training the complete wrong systems in your body. And that fourth mistake is taking rests that are too short. It's super easy to just rush through your training sessions to get them over with, but that is one of the worst things you could do for your performance. It's true that to get good at something, you have to do it a lot. However, max speed sprinting is not something you can just do over and over in back-to-back repetitions because it is extremely taxing on your body and, more importantly, to your nervous system. On top of that, you have to consider the ATP stores in your muscles. ATP is the energy that your body uses at a cellular level. And when you do all-out exercise over short periods of time, it drains your creatine phosphate system, which is one of the ways that your body produces ATP for quick usage. And it takes around 3 to 5 minutes to fully replenish your ATP in the creatine phosphate system, which you need for intense efforts that are less than 8 to 12 seconds. That means that every time you rest for less than 3 minutes in between your repetitions, you won't have your fuel supply filled back up, and therefore you won't be able to run at your maximum effort. In a lot of cases, that means you actually won't be developing or improving your maximum speed, or at least not as much as you could be if you were properly rested and refreshed. In your training for plyometric activities or short activities where you have to apply a lot of force quickly, I usually recommend around 3 minutes of rest. For moderately short activities like a 10 to 15 meter resisted sprint, I recommend around 5 minutes of rest. And for all-out sprint reps, I usually recommend a rest of about 8 minutes. However, simply resting enough is not the only thing you have to pay attention to. You also have to make sure to keep your overall volume low and avoid building up excess fatigue. And that is the fifth mistake you might be making that is hurting your speed. This can happen a lot to athletes that aren't coached properly, and it is one of the worst things you could possibly do. It usually stems from running too slowly during repetitions or not keeping your intensity high enough. And if you don't fix it, it could really hurt your performance. I have an entire video on this topic here, so make sure you check it out if you want to be as fast as possible. On top of that, I include a specific protocol for max speed training in that video, so make sure you watch the whole thing.